RespectMyRegion.com. We're back on another episode of the Respect My Region podcast, brought to you guys by the RMR Podcast Network and our wonderful collection of sponsors. For today's episode, we're rocking with SparksCan.com and Tact Firm. These are two marketing agencies, folks, that do different things. Tact Firm specializes in email and retention for retailers, and SparksCan is our premier partner for all things Weed Maps, Loyalty, Leafly. Weed Maps, Leafly, Yelp, and Google Maps. They can also help you dial in your loyalty program as well. Be sure to reach out if you guys have any questions. That goes out to all my dispensaries. Now, folks, we've got a very special guest today. We've got Yaro Kubrin over here. He's a real estate agent. He's a legacy guy. He's done some growing. He's done some selling. He's moved a little bit of properties, and he's got a variety of projects. He's offline. He's working on something that we will showcase on a different episode. But my guy Yaro is here today, and we're going to welcome him to the show. How we doing, Yaro? Welcome. How we rocking today?
I'm doing great, Joey. Thanks for having me on. I've been watching what you do for a very long time, so it makes me proud to be able to finally be a guest. Quick point of clarification: I'm not a real estate agent. I'm a real estate professional. I was a real estate agent until the last time I went to jail for cannabis, and at that point they pinched my license.
Valid.
And I decided I didn't want to leave real estate and I didn't want to leave cannabis. So I forged a new version of my career without a license and still with a very heavy emphasis on cannabis and real estate.
And thank you for that clarification, because for the general public, the general person, I don't own a house. I've never used a real estate agent. I'm a classic basic renter. I don't know the terminology, and that's why it actually makes a lot of sense, Yaro, for you to be a guest on today's show. You're going to educate me, our following, a little bit about real estate, not just homes and buying and agent stuff, but also too specifically about cannabis, because there's a whole side of the cannabis industry, Yaro, that the most consumers, if not all of them, we don't know, we don't care, don't ask, don't tell, right? The whole side of real estate. What does me going in the parking lot have to do with real estate? You know what I'm saying? For the legacy operators and us legacy consumers, but also too, I actually redid my I renewed my medical card today.
Yeah.
What does that exactly have to do with real estate? Not much. And that's why we have you here today, is because you're going to help bring some clarity to what it is that cannabis real estate is, what it is you've been doing, and we're also going to talk about your legacy to legal journey. Does that sound okay?
Sounds great.
Now, everybody, I do have to shout out this. I'm smoking some fireweed, and it's from Cam in California. You guys might have heard of them, and so a big shout out to them for their wedding cake today, for helping provide the creativity for these questions. Now, Yaro, legacy to legal is a phrase we hear often in the brand side of things.
Yeah.
But last I checked, you're not trying to sell me weed at one of the local dispensaries, right? You're a real estate professional. And so what is it that you do on the day-to-day as a real estate professional in the current cannabis industry? What does that look like for everybody?
Well, I'm legacy to legal, but I don't have a brand per se, and I'm not on shelves, as you indicated. And I have three businesses. The first is a content creation and marketing business that focuses primarily on photogrammetry technology, such as the virtual tours and the ways to really bring things to life. That was an offshoot of my real estate. I've been in real estate for 23 years now. And what I realized about real estate is that all marketing is a one-off. There's no economies of scale, and that most real estate professionals are not great storytellers, and words tell, but pictures sell. And so when I lost that license in 2016 as a result of that third cannabis felony I got in my lifetime, or third set, I should say, all cannabis related, I might add. When that happened, I had to kind of reinvent myself, and I had to think about where in my industry there were gaps and what kind of solutions I might be able to provide.
Yeah, where can you get in and where can you fit in with your expertise, right?
So that's one plank of my business. Second plank of my business is I consult, and what I do is biz dev and corp dev. And I don't really like to admit that because it makes me sound like a Chad, but as I take a step back from the services that I provide, helping people to make smarter decisions, save time, save money, let's stress test these ideas. Let's not just be aspirational, defense wins championships. That's why I named my consultancy Special Teams Consulting, because Special Teams is the craziest football squad there is on the whole on the whole team. And you race down the field and you don't know what's going to happen, but you know you got to do something and get it in the end zone. So that's a large part of my consultancy. And then there's this overlay of real estate, and a lot of the consultant work that I do, if it's not biz dev and corp dev or go to market, is stress testing and like making sure that people's ideas make sense for the real estate they're going to operate on, because typically there's limiting factors and most people don't figure those out until they come smack up against them. And then the final thing in my business interest is I work on a real estate team, and the real estate team that I work on has changed over time, but as an unlicensed assistant marketing manager and land use expert, I now work with a gentleman who's a realtor, MBA, and go figure, a cannabis attorney. And he's the main agent of record. He's the gentleman who's writing the contract.
So you're on the super team.
I'm on the super team
for real estate in general, but then also with law and cannabis adjacent specialties.
Yeah, and what I like about our team is I think of myself as Keanu Reeves in the Matrix, and he's that black guy in the mothership with the dreads on the little laptop and the wheelchair, and I'm like, I need a download for a Ducati and a Heckler and Koch, and he's like, boom, boom, got you. So I do a lot of the field work. We sell a lot of farms and ranches. Many are not cannabis related, and because we only practice in California, in the last couple of years, California has been a pronounced dumpster fire, all things cannabis related. And so we do a lot of just, bread and butter, simple stuff. Grandma died. There's a mobile home, needs to be whatever.
I think it's important to understand the overlapping factors in your experience and your team's experience and how that portrays how that pertains to cannabis potentially.
Well,
because there's patterns, there's research, there's marketing, there's numbers, sales, fiscal data, all these different things, financial data, all these different things. And and I've also have the smallest baby experience of being marketing support for a real estate group myself.
Nice.
And it was from that mentorship. Shout out Anton Stetner. Shout out the solutions group that they had up there in Washington. It was doing marketing for them and understanding patterns and data and local economies and local keywords and things that really helped us get this experience to make more data-driven decisions in other areas of our life. Real estate is simple. It can be difficult, but if you do the things consistently, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, you can actually get wealth from it still in today's world. It's a little harder than it used to be, but it is still able to be there. And in cannabis, you were saying these reports and helping people like even determine if the properties are good. Think about that experience and that wealth of knowledge you have from regular real estate, and then red flags and green flags, right? Just to dumb it down. Red flag, green flag, red flag. And people that don't have that experience, they're not going to be able to identify these flags so quickly, whereas somebody like you are going to be able to identify, like, no, this isn't going to work. We got the restrictions, we've got the rules, we've got the geography things, we got all these different things that play into it and that experience. Talk to me about your experience and what you've seen over the years and how it's directly been able to apply into cannabis in the last decade.
Sure. So as a legacy cannabis guy, trimming for my mom when I was 11 years old, she was a Mendocino farmer, and then going into medical and then owning a bunch of real estate, or it felt like a bunch of real estate at the time, and being experiencing the real estate meltdown of 06, 07, having these high interest loans or interest only loans and wanting to hold the real estate that I had. Many of us in real estate and in the trades migrated towards indoor cultivation as a way to sort of hold our real estate and to be able to have it cash flow in a way that other tenancies wouldn't allow. And so in the 215 era, I started converting a lot of the rental property that I was fortunate enough to own into cultivation property. And so I always thought I'd get into
were these residentials or commercial?
Residential. I mean, I never met a barn I didn't want to turn into like a spaceship. and so, I got into real estate because my grandfather had done it, and I believed that there was going to be a relationship between boring and profitable. And I studied theater and art in high school, and I was like, I don't really want to be a starving artist working in food service to try to wait for my big break. I want to find something boring that I can count on. So I went to college. I took like 20 units of real estate, and I was like, this is definitely boring enough to be profitable if done right. And I did it because I had started to buy properties, and people were like, oh, you're good at this, you should get into sales. I was like, I don't like sales, fuck the world. And they're like, yeah, but you might want to know some things or have a license. I was like, okay, great. I'll get into this. So I took that, and then the cannabis experience. And in a 215 era, people would call on me because they knew I was discreet. I'd keep my mouth shut. I could think about things like power or privacy, or is this in a place, are you right next door to?
You were familiar with these words and these factors, these variables that
that's right,
are green flags or red flags depending on the person.
Yeah, and so on the 11th hour, at the end of prohibition and the beginning of adult use in California for cannabis, after fighting a cannabis case for 5 years, I ended up having to go to jail. And in that, surrendered my real estate license. And so I had a little time to sit down. And while I was doing that, I knew that I wanted to come out and be a cannabis consultant. I knew I wanted to focus on the real property overlays. I knew that I had already worked with really, really difficult entitlement processes. I mean, if you've ever tried to pull a permit for construction on a property with a historic designation in San Francisco, you're probably better off swimming with great white sharks naked without a cage and a bunch of blood around you, because it'd probably be easier. So I knew that I already had this experience in things that were complicated, non-linear, a lot of overlays. And I was like, okay, if this cannabis thing is going to be legal now, all of it starts with zoning, all of it starts with an APN number, all of it starts with an address. And I knew that everybody was going to be more focused on the fun things, the genetics, the overlaps. Where does music and cannabis,
not the boring.
Yeah, where does
never the boring
and wine and weed, where do all those come together? All that stuff that's fun and exciting and creative. And I was like, all right, that's all great, and I love that too. Where's the boring stuff? Where's the stuff that like people are like, oh God, I don't want to deal with that. Can I pay you to think for me? Which, by the way, is not a good model. But I was like, okay, this cannabis stuff it makes a lot of sense. And a lot of the real estate professionals, they don't know anything about it. All the attorneys are like, find a subject matter expert. And I was like, here I am.
Hello.
What do you want to know? And I started looking at the limiting factors of real estate, because most people would look at the zoning and they're like, I'm good. And I'm like, yeah, maybe. And so what I learned to do in life and in business, and especially in cannabis real estate and consulting, is I learned to run at the no. Most people are so busy running at the yes or the maybes or the possibilities. I run at the no. And it's not because I'm negative. I just want to find the deal killer as quickly as possible. You talked about green flags and red flags. I'm like, if I can find the red flag, the quicker I find the red flag, the quicker I put this deal to rest, the quicker it doesn't move forward. It doesn't take everybody's time and money. If I don't find them, great, do the deal. If I do find them, I saved you a ton of stress. You're welcome. Let's go find something that fits.
Time is of the essence in cannabis, Yarrow, and so the quicker we find that, the costs go down. Because if they've already secured their property, money sunk costs every month, every week.
That's right.
You're not securing your property and you're in a major metropolitan city. Have fun with break-ins.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's more money, not just the cost of having it. Now you got to protect it, right?
I mean, look at what happened with Cookies LA. They had to shut that store down because they had a bad lease, because their lease didn't extend, because somebody was paying attention to all the things but having a lease renewal, right? So I've seen the impact of so-so real estate on cannabis businesses looking backwards for the last 9 years, and they knew that the real estate was the boring, important part, at least through my set of lenses. And so mostly behind the scenes as a consultant, and then finally took 2 public-facing roles in regulated cannabis. The first was as a director of real estate for a commercial real estate company that developed primarily retail sites and then landlorded to operators. And the second as a director of business development for another commercial real estate company, Pubco, operating in 10 states, landlording to any licensed cannabis operator. But I always knew the real estate was critical, because people are like, let me tell you my vision. And I'm like, don't bother. Just tell me your zoning and I'll tell you the limitations of your vision. They're like, oh, I want to do an Airbnb with an extraction facility where you have a glass and you can look through and see it all being made, and there's a consumption lounge, and we're going to do food and we're going to infuse it right there. And I'm like, there's no zoning that exists for that. That's a great idea. I'd like to join you when you stand it up. But in the meantime, there's not a regulatory paradigm that's going to allow you to effectuate your vision. So
yeah, the closest thing to all of those anomalies you just named all happening at the same time is Planet 13.
Yeah.
minus the Airbnb hotel.
That's right.
Big focal point of that whole thing missing in that element. you imagine when Planet 13 gets a hotel attached to it,
Then it
and
would
they
be
keep
Planet 13 Hard Rock.
Yeah, I'm not upset at that point. I'm really
if
not.
you can stumble
That's
into
a cool
your room
idea.
after an overly infused moment of merriment, I'm not mad at that at all.
Come on, man. Come on, man. Yara, this is an interesting conversation. You're definitely pushing the boundaries of things that I've thought about. Cannabis real estate, the topic, folks. Yaro here talking about his different ventures and businesses, the experiences that he has, and the importance of zoning and how that ultimately can really shape and form the formulation of your business, right? And what you're trying to do. Because we can have this vision, but if we can't bring it to life in real life in terms of the stipulations that exist, right? And the different places and the different physical real estate offerings that exist, then your dream is just a dream.
This
and that's all
industry is
be.
high on vision, low on execution. We've all seen it. We've all talked about, building the airplane while it's taking off. Terrible analogy, because 100% of the time the airplane will crash in that analogy. Everybody talks about being a founder and spread thin. Some people are just not capable and then use being a founder and spread thin as the excuse for not executing properly. But it is, everybody's got aspirational goals, and there's.
I think I'm both of those.
I identify as both. Everybody's got
I think I identify as both of those.
Aspirational goals, and that's great. But it's like, okay, again, going back to my lens of football, I always want to know, all right, I know you want to win the Super Bowl. Let's just talk about the first 10 plays. What is that drive down the field? How do we convert on first down?
Script that out. Execute. Discipline.
Script that out. And, and so the real estate is always a part of it. And so, there was a moment here when I was released from doing time this last time for all these cannabis charges that I pled to. I was on what's called 1170 supervision, and I was continuing to serve a prison term in society. It's not like parole or probation. It's called 1170, and they would come and stop in on my house, and I was in this criminal justice system or criminal injustice system for 4 years after I was released. Yeah. And during that period of time, I was really reluctant to stand up a cannabis business myself, to put a permit in my name. And people were like, oh, why are you helping all these people? You're so great at cultivation. You're so good at indoor facility design. You totally understand the real estate. Why are you just like trading your time and mind for money? And why are you not scaling this and building that and doing this? And why are you not Michael Stimmitz, Flocaning the Mendocino?
Yeah, y'all, why?
Are you not? Why are you not Lowell's down in Salinas? And I was like, you know what? Maybe. But maybe I'm just a little bit older and I'm just trying to be a little conservative, and maybe I'm just trying to get a base hit or a second base hit, and I'm not trying to hit home runs, and maybe I'm just going to try to get around the bases as many times as I can without having to be Barry Bonds and hit a homer into the stands.
There is different ways to put points on the board in those analogies.
And so for me, I like to beat up on myself. If I'm not criticizing you, I'd rather just criticize myself, because then there's no rebuttal and I can't tell myself to fuck off. So I love to beat up on myself. And one of the things I beat up on myself for years was like, why am I not more ambitious? Why am I not being more aggressive? Why am I not taking things to great heights? Why am I not doing the next, international tissue culture genetics company that's going to, be the next best, coolest thing? And as I watched the great highs and the great lows and the stress and the ulcers and the gray hair and the crow's feet and the horror stories of many, many founders as markets went from nascent and exciting to mature and competitive to sometimes even dwindling or compressing, and that arc of that sort of business development, business ecosystem in some of these newer adult use markets. And I heard the horror stories of money's lost and mom's money from the HELOC on her house that she took out, uncle's money being lost, investors suing the operators, and all of the stress. I realized that like the universe had a plan for me, and it wasn't to try to scale things to great heights and also risk those great lows. It was to just keep hitting them second base hits, and to not beat up on myself for not being more ambitious or aggressive in trying to do something extraordinary, but to really remember that my value didn't need to be created. I just need to make sure I'm in the right places with the value that I already have and the understanding that I have around cannabis and real estate and that intersection. And so I've been able to revisit some of that stuff, beat up on myself a lot less, and realize that, like, yeah, I'm in the boring part of the space. It's never going to be sexy, but it doesn't have to be, because the people who are doing all the sexy stuff, they still call me for those boring conversations.
Well, and also too, it sounds like your path. There's these brands, and you have these goals, and you have this vision of, like you said, hitting bases, getting base hits, and doubles, triples, singles, and not necessarily doing it and having the same definition of success. It sounds like, as some of these other people, although they are all definitive of success, maybe it's not necessarily that thing you're trying to go after. And so my question to you is, and this is something that I've been asked not recently by other people, but it's sat with me for a number of years, is, what do you, so what are you trying to do with Respect My Region, right? So what are you really trying to do, Yara? What's the real goal? What does that World Series look like for you? What is winning the World Series in your business sense really look like, right? Being that we're in Game 7 tonight. So let's say you're one of the two baseball teams, right? It's me versus you. I'm another real estate person. What does you winning look like in getting to the World Series? What does that look like for you in cannabis as a real estate person? Is it the million square foot sale, right? Over in Adelanto or wherever, Palm Springs and all those there, Cathedral City? What's the real big goal here? If there is one in your space.
Yeah, I mean, I think winning for me looks like a couple things. First of all, it's real estate license reinstatement, which I've been positioned to do since 2019, and have been so busy that I've been working in my businesses instead of on my business, and getting that reinstated, not just for the redemptive and sort of psychological value, but as it currently stands, I don't talk prices, I don't quote interest rates, and I don't talk about how inspections impact value, because those are licensed activities. So luckily I'm on a team, and a lot of people carry the ball, and people bring business to the team in no small measure because I'm top of the funnel. They trust me. They know I would only align with seasoned practitioners who are going to do the right thing. But it would be nice, and I think important, to get that license back. When I was a director of real estate for CanDev, when we were focused on retail in 15 states, I had 2 or 3 salespeople who worked for our company as W-2 employees. And outside of California, I was their boss, and we didn't need to have a real estate license because we were just working for our entity. And inside of California, they would answer to me as the director of real estate, but they would also answer to their broker of record because they were licensed agents in California. And I had these whippersnappers who were in their low to mid 20s. And I used to think that teaching was for people who couldn't do. Like, if you sucked at something, then you go get a job teaching about it because you couldn't do it, right? I really had this bias against teaching, even though both my parents are teachers. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm sorry, Dad. I used to think if you taught, it was because you couldn't play in the big leagues, right? Back to that baseball analogy, you couldn't get to the World Series, so you taught people how to swing the bat. Then I started working with these 20-somethings, and I started teaching them what I understood about real estate. And I built a speed team. I built a little Athens, Greek, Achilles force of speed in commercial real estate. Commercial real estate is super slow, and we were super fast, and we're running circles around MSOs because we're like, bada bing, bada boom, let's drink more coffee, let's fucking go. And I taught these little velociraptoruses like Jurassic Park to like understand where their claws and their teeth were and to get deals done. And I found it to be so spiritually gratifying that it gives me goosebumps to talk about it to this day. So what does success look like for me in the future, in the near future, in this industry and outside? It looks like license reinstatement, and then it looks like being the Cub Scout den mother to a Northern California real estate team. And we're starting to build that out right now with our brokerage, Travis being the attorney and lead guy, and having an agent in the Santa Cruz area, having an agent in the East Bay, having an agent in Marin, having a couple agents in Sonoma County where I live, and making sure that we can really serve at least Northern California, because our radius is like Salinas to Southern Humboldt, and making sure that we've got boots on the ground. And I want to Cub Scout den mother that team. I want to make sure that everybody is picking my brain, that that's part of my job, that I help keep deals afloat, that I give novel and unique perspectives to people who have a license but maybe don't have decades and decades of transactional experience. And I want to ensure everybody wins. I want to be like that little mama dolphin, helping the little baby dolphin get his blowhole above the waves and breathe. And I found it to be very gratifying to leverage what I know and to help other people get stuff done, and to really be in sort of a mentorship position, or managing member of a real estate corporation. So that's what I'd like to see in the future. The other thing I'd like to do, and what success would look like for me, is there's a lot of new markets that I just haven't had the focus or the inclination to participate in, where the best thing California can do is export its know-how, whether that's culture, genetics, real estate, lessons learned. We have a lot of pain here. We have a lot of expensive lessons that have been learned, and most of them are applicable to newer markets. 65% of the dumpster fires in New York I saw coming, especially when it came to things like they're still dealing with now, which is the government made a mistake on the radiuses, and now they're thinking about relocating all these retail locations. I'm like, hey, guys, we've done all that before. So one of the values I think all people in California and cannabis have is that they can go into new markets, and it's like they have the advantage of going backwards in time. And we already know a lot of stuff. Doesn't mean it's all going to work out the same way, but it means that there are certain replicated policy missteps that you can take advantage of already understanding and really provide value to people in those newer markets, whether that's where they're at or they're trying to expand into those markets. So I like that very much. I like that. And then what does success look like for me? I got kids that I'm still raising, and I want to make sure that I probably have worked too much. If I look back on the last 20 years, I think there's some success leaves clues, but I think for me, the clues that it leaves, if I could even say that I'm somewhat successful, which is a questionable position to even make, is that I spent too much time working. I spent too much time fucking working. And so to me, the win in the future is like, probably the KPI is how much time did I spend making sure my son can get out there fishing? How much time did I spend out on the water? How much time did I walk the dog? How much time did I do those things that don't do anything for us professionally, but make sure that we're not one-dimensional? And so I think I've gotten some great successes in one area of my life, but I've left some things really under-tended to as a result. And so I don't believe in balance. I don't believe people who are very talented are balanced, but there's some areas that I want to spend a lot more time in because tomorrow's not a guarantee.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great perspective to always share that. One, guys, tomorrow isn't a guarantee. You guys have the energy now, or if you can get yourself work harder now to be able to have longer energy later to work on the things that you want to do in life, I think it's huge. There is, in your eyes, there's not a balance, but it's this improper imbalancing act, right? It's this imperfection of balancing. But we're all striving to have some form of it.
It's the pendulum swing. I get obsessed,
I always
and then
say
I
this:
swing
if it's
back.
sunny outside, I'm from Seattle. If it's sunny outside and I see it and I haven't been outside all day, I'm trying to go for a walk, right? I get out of it what we give.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
You know what I mean? And that when I'm loose and I'm walking, I'm stronger. I can work longer because right now my phase is working longer. I don't have family and this and that. I'm stacking. I'm in the building phase for myself. There's not the desire to go out and party and drink unless it's Raider stuff or whatever it is. Like, there's very limited things that I would go make sacrifices for instead of building towards the goals that I've achieved.
I had a goal that I failed on, which was to set up an educational system, a mobile learning system that I could offer to real estate professionals in new and maturing real estate markets to help them to understand cannabis real estate. Because what I found in cannabis real estate is there's usually this like cast of, it's like a circus. You got attorneys on either side, consultants on either side. You've got compliance consultants. You got
that idea is genius, and it's not as hard as you think, especially from a marketer's perspective, bro. Here's your reminder. One, all the events already happen in all the markets that would make a difference that you would focus on anyways. And two, you don't only have to do events, little mixers and shit, and invite the same fucking industry people all the time. It's pretty easy for us to take $50 or $100 in ads and boost an event, the same real estate events that are already happening locally, except now it's a cannabis education seminar, right? They happen all over the place. They're in every market. My boy's in Florida. He films it full time for him. My videographer, that's what he does. He goes and films presentations around the country at all these conferences for a couple of different real estate people. And so that's right there. We know that they're there because people are always going to commercial real estate seminars. People are always recruiting homeowners and buyers. So the culture exists. And it might even re-energize you because you found this passion for teaching. And the more young guns you recruit to the team, the quicker you have velociraptors running around
I love
looking
my
for the
little
right thing to do.
velociraptors. When I worked at CanDev, I
Come
had
on.
these amazing staff. Well, Alex and Allie. I had an A, a boy and a girl, a man and a woman. And to watch them grow up, mature, to watch them get married, to watch them buy their new house, to watch them sort of level up in their lives. I can only take this much credit for it, but being courtside to watching that professional development was incredibly enriching. And the thing about cannabis real estate is, depending upon where a market is, you're going to have a different real estate overlay. In California right now, we're talking about distressed properties. In newer markets, you're talking about this optimistic bubble that's created, and these crazy valuations based on zoning and setbacks, and which properties will actually qualify for which license type. And so there are these different chapters, all of which are very applicable for real estate professionals. And not that any of them need to be a subject matter expert, but at least they understand that part of their profession is around continuing education. And as we go from 33 states to 43 states to hopefully 50 states, each of those markets is going to be at a different point in that life cycle. And so there's actionable information that real estate professionals can access and should know. Even if they hire consultants, they should know these things, because for a while, cannabis was highest and best use for certain commercial real estate. It was the most profitable use of certain pieces of property. If you had an amazing piece of retail that was set back from enough churches and sensitive uses and had enough parking and had great visible traffic count, and you were in an emerging market, that was going to be your best moneymaker as a real estate owner.
Yeah.
And so it's important, I think.
Either that, or you could rent it out to some potentially failing business that's not essential if it was during COVID.
Well, so it's interesting that you say that, because one of the things that we focused on was finding retail eligible locations that had existing tenants, not asking the landlords to have their tenants move out, running our permits while they're already cash flowing from an existing tenant. And then if and when we can get the entitlements, making sure that those tenants didn't have the ability to stay there longer than we wanted them to. And then we didn't have to pay money every month on empty real estate, just, lighting it on fire.
I've got a question, because you've got me thinking about the importance of zoning. You've got me thinking about these markets and how they've got a pretty much a cyclic nature in terms of too much licensing and too much cultivation canopy, then too much product, and then price compression, and then rinse repeat, and then it's more open. Then the only responses after that are open more stores, lower the taxes, and then change the marketing laws to be less restrictive. Right? That's the cycle.
And I'm right there with you for those 3 points.
That's the only options they have.
That's right.
So it's like so all of that said, I go back to the zoning. But this zoning would be about consumption lounges, because you talked about that in your responses to us in the pre-interview for this episode. My question is if most of the lounges haven't found ways to be profitable or be some kind of valuable tool in the ecosystem, right? If we've had a number of them fail in California already. Big press, big budgets, whatever. They all, for the most part, they failed except for Artistries and the Woods. Is there zoning elements that make that a foreseeable future?
So, good question. Allow me to riff, ramble, and rant for a second. I am super bullish on consumption lounges in general. And I think
that's what, because it's like if they all, a lot of them have bombed though, so it's like,
but I think the failures are not necessarily a failure on the concept. So I'm super bullish on consumption lounges. I do believe that the alcohol model has great parallels that we could, and that we can pull from as analogies or equivalencies. And you don't go to Sonoma County and then go taste some New Zealand wine. You come to Sonoma County and you drink what was grown here. And I think the same makes a lot of sense for areas that have a pedigree for producing fine cannabis. And I'm not going to say that's just Sonoma County or the Emerald Triangle. I'm also going to give big ups to the Santa Cruz area, the Big Bear area. You know, there's some great
And we
places
can't
in South
forget
County.
we can't
Grass
forget these
Valley.
indoor grows down in LA and SoCal in the desert too, because they're there.
Yeah, and you know we've and from an outdoor area, I mean we've got Grass Valley. We've got a lot of places that have been making really good cannabis for a really long time. So I think the consumption lounge thing is the way of the future, because all it's doing is allowing and sanctioning human behavior as human behavior has existed for decades, if not centuries, which is people want to get together and smoke weed. It's not necessarily just a solo sport. It can be, sure. That's why we got a dog walker. But you know what? It's also a place where people want to get together and spend time, break bread, and enjoy each other's time in the same space.
I am positive on consumption lounges as well. However, the data would show that people aren't searching for that yet. The behavior on the internet, which is psychologically reflective of supply and demand in the real world, doesn't indicate that that's a huge thing by the millions yet.
Okay, so consumption lounges don't make money. So that's the first thing, right? Currently, it's not a profit driver. It can be a market share tool. You can sell more in your dispensary if you've got a consumption lounge, but consumption lounges in and of themselves, it's not going to be a big money maker. And the profit margin on typical things in the restaurant space is so much less because it doesn't have the same taxation and overregulation that I don't think consumption lounges are a big money maker. And so I think some have failed because people thought they were going to make a lot of money with consumption lounges. And I think the model was broken. I don't think that that's where people make the money. I think the consumption lounge becomes part of the draw. It becomes part of the reason why someone might choose a dispensary A over dispensary B. It might be why they stay a little longer. It might be that they try a product. You made no money serving them because they were there for 35 minutes taking up your table space. But then they end up buying a little bit more of that on their way out, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I just think that from a hospitality, tourism, user experience perspective, the idea that you can go into a dispensary and then there's no place to enjoy it. You're in a park. Oops, it's a public park. I can't smoke a pre-roll. Oops, I can't go back to my hotel. I can't smoke a pre-roll. Where the hell am I going to smoke this damn pre-roll? It just doesn't make any sense, right? Like we haven't regulated the way humans behave until we have consumption lounges. Don't get me wrong. I'm good for a huddle in the alleyway. But I'd also like to not be in the alleyway, right?
Yeah. I mean, the huddle in the alleyway is good if I'm at a bar, and that's what is available because that's normal in those instances. But when we're talking about going to a dispensary to purchase cannabis, it would be great to have a safe place. I know, like where I'm from in Washington, it's not allowed. Oregon, not allowed. A number of states don't have any form of version of that at all. Shout out to California for having it, New Jersey for just opening them, Illinois for having them, and I want to say New York as well. It's an exciting time.
I think there'll be an era where they look back and they go, "You didn't have consumption lounges? Are you kidding me?"
Absolutely.
I'm also bullish on beverages. I know that the data isn't there yet to support that, and I am still very bullish on beverages.
Big news in the beverage world as well. Target in Minnesota, a number of their locations picked up their hemp beverages, hemp THC beverages throughout there. I want to say 8 to 12 different ones got picked up, more or less. In that one, you guys can read more about it on our website, respectmyregion.com. Also, too, across the South and the Southeast of the country, you've got the Bevmos and Total Wines and a bunch of different beverage and liquor stores all carrying hemp THC products. It's very much becoming normalized in these other areas. So big shout out to all those retailers for picking that up. It makes sense to be bullish on beverages, but it also, too, it's very tough. The people that have been doing it have a head up for sure right now. If they have experience doing cannabis beverages, experience doing hemp beverages, they will tell you. We've had a number of them on our show recently, and it's definitely not easy. So be prepared if you guys are out there and you guys want to launch your own hemp drink. Be prepared for a battle because that's what it is. It takes a lot of work and it takes a fair amount of money to get rolling too.
So that's a very good point. I want to piggyback on that. It is a very resource-intensive supply chain business. Yeah. Emulsion tech is not finalized. It's taken a lot of money from a lot of companies. Think Ambev into Constellation and the $3 billion. You know, the godfather of seeing this was Julian Cohn over there. And I think history is going to show that he was a visionary. a lot of the formulations currently are not great. I mean, if you close your eyes and you just let your taste buds do the talking, a lot of them still have a lot of room for improvement, and some of us want
And
to
they've
like
come a
them.
long way since they started.
They have come a long way, but I would say in the same breath, they've still got a long ways to go. And so I think formulation is going to be the difference. We talk about companies like Can. They founded a company without ever having a formula. And so they took a very top-down approach. They didn't, I think, and for me, I would say start the opposite. Start with your formula before you build a company around it, right? That's just me. I think you start with the product that you feel is superior to your competitors in a market. Again, that's just me. And I think it's interesting. You talk about sort of consumption lounges. You know, Joey, you and I are both Buddists. I think there's this conversation around evaluating products, not just the most gourmet, not just the Opus One, not just the filet mignons, but products at many tiers, and being able to help the market and the consumer and the custody understand what might be a great value for wherever they want to spend in all of these different form factors and delivery systems. And I think that we're going to see more of that. And I think the consumption lounges are really going to support people feeling like they can look at the dispensary shelves as a place they can play and explore instead of feeling overwhelmed because there's 32 options of one thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's got to be some differentiating factors when it comes to products. People's perspective, somebody that looks like you, sounds like you, talks like you, is from the same city you're in potentially or the same state. Those perspectives are really important when it comes to products. It's important when it comes to brands. And that's a big reason why I've been doing these product reviews for so long, is just because, you know, in the early medical days, I just didn't feel like I was people that looked or sounded like me. It was just a bunch of people that were weed heads. And it's like, there can be a balance to that. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying that someone that looks like me or you is the defining perspective of what weed is good or not. But that's where it's important to be able to have, again, some of that balance in there between all the different people that are in this world sharing their thoughts. Shout out to the Buddhist program for having a family and a community of reviewers there. And shout out to the Ganjier program for having their community of educators and we'll call them educatees, people being educated that have chosen to spend money to learn more about cannabis and to share that passion and knowledge with other people. Yara, before we get you out of here, my final question for you. In terms of the real estate, your business, you and what you do, what is the most important thing you want people to know about you, and how can they get a hold of you guys and reach out if they want to engage you in that way?
Well, they can find me on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. I mean, I'm just my name.
What do they search? What do they search? How do you spell it? How do they spell your name?
Yarrow Kubrin, or Yarrow Lee Kubrin,
Cool.
YARROW KUBRIN.
Easy.
There's only one because it's not a common name, and and I think what I would want people to know is that I recognize that professionally I am incredibly imperfect, but what I am perfect about is commitment and honesty. And if you don't have that, the rest of it doesn't matter anyway. And so I go out and I'm willing to own it when I am less than perfect, but I go out and I really try to create value. And I think the goal for me is always add more value than you take exponentially and keep it 100% real all the time. Not when it's convenient, not when there's a victory lap, all the time. And I think that really, you know, there's places that I practice, there's things that I do, there's services that I monetize that feed me, but my currency is trust. And I got that from the legacy environment. And I don't think I might be an acquired taste. I don't know that everybody loves me, but nobody's out there saying I burned them and that I owe them and that I this and that I that. And I think all of that is not something that I can take credit for. It's that I was raised in a legacy environment where those things were just expected. It was just like oxygen in the air. If it didn't exist, nothing was going to work. And
a perfect way to end the episode on the theme, we get what we give. We get what we give. I appreciate you, Yar, for joining us here today, everybody. This was another episode of the Respect My Region podcast. Yarrow Kubrin in the house. Be sure to reach out, tap in, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter. You heard it here. If you're trying to reach out, get involved. Anybody that needs any help getting their property listed, a real solid resource is an asset there. If you're looking for something, solid resource and an asset there as well. I appreciate you guys all for watching. A big shout out to our sponsors as well as SparksCan.com and Tact Firm. I love you guys, and we'll see you on the next episode. Yarrow, appreciate you, brother. We
Thank
out.
you, Joey.